All right. Welcome to another episode of LearnBiz The Podcast. I am Sandy B, and I'm joined by the lovely Lisa K. Crawford,
Aren't you
and
nice?
who has a lovely, lovely tan. She looks like she just came from an oasis.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
so we are chatting today about Kevin Samuels, the business and the brand. Now, disclaimer before we begin, we are not talking about Kevin Samuels per se, right? We are talking about the example of Kevin Samuels and his untimely passing because he passed away suddenly. He was at the prime in terms of building his business empire, his brand, in particular in the social media space. So rest in peace to Kevin Samuels, and
Yes.
much condolences and prayers to his family during this difficult time. So disclaimers aside, again, we are not talking about Kevin Samuels, so don't troll us. We are
Right.
talking about Kevin Samuels, the business and the brand, and we wanted to highlight things that every entrepreneur should really consider when it comes to trying to establish yourself, but also protect yourself. So we have three things that we're going to focus on, and I'm gonna shoot to Lisa this first one, right? So we need to plan for the what ifs. As entrepreneurs, we need to have answers to what if, and you can just fill in the blank. What if I suddenly pass
Yes.
away? What if I, get ill and I'm not able to operate my business? What if there is an interruption to my business? What am I going to do? So, what are your thoughts on this? What ifs, Lisa?
Well, I can tell you that probably a lot of people don't like to even think about this topic, especially if it means that they're not a part of their business or they passed away. No, people don't like to talk about these things. So, one of the first things I will say as entrepreneurs, people in business, we need to get used to dealing with uncomfortable topics. Actually, we need to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so when you're uncomfortable, you ask yourself these questions and you begin to plan against them. So on your what if I'm no longer here, you can begin to say, well, what happens? Does my brand, does it die with me? Or do I put something in place that will protect my brand and it will continue to live on beyond me physically being here?
Right.
So some people don't think about that, and some people don't even care about that because they may feel like, when I leave, my brand leaves. But
Right.
that may not be the case because people can misappropriate and misuse and
Right.
try to build off of your brand and build their own brand off of what you left behind.
Right. And, when you think about planning, if you fail to plan, you're in essence planning to fail.
Yes.
So it's ultimately key for you to decide now what you want to happen. Otherwise, other people will be making the decision for you. Lisa and I we're both probate attorneys. So we are familiar with what happens when you don't have a plan in place. And we look at it in the same manner with the business. When you don't have a plan for these things that are always going to happen, what do? Other night we did our entrepreneur mindset summit.
Yes.
We had some technical difficulties. We had some little glitches here and there. Did we just crumble? No, our plan is always, as we're going through whatever it is, the show must go on. We just keep pushing forward. And of course, we have plenty of things to talk about. So it's not like we can't fill the void, right?
Right.
So it's always important to make sure that when you think about your business, you have a plan for the what if. If you are a YouTuber like Kevin Samuels, you have to be able to understand that your existence on this platform can last years and years beyond your physical existence. So it's up to you to decide, well, do I want to be here infinite online, Or do I ultimately want this to be dismantled when I pass? And just want to shout out to RM. Saw RM in Suzette Speaks room last night. Thank you so much for tuning in to us and giving us a little bit of support.
Thank you.
Definitely appreciate the love and you popping in. So in thinking about, we need a plan for the what ifs. When you have a platform like a YouTube and you are a Kevin Samuels who has 1 million plus followers, who has a million plus on other social media, who may be making, monies from different activities, that what if conversation is clutch, because it really sets up whether or not the moment of your passing is the demolishment of your empire, or whether or not that is just the beginning and your empire will continue, for your family to continue to benefit from it. So that's
Absolutely.
a really good point.
Because when you think about it, I mean, someone could actually have a successor in place to say, hey, if anything ever happens to me, this is where I want you to pick it up at. And to continue that on, if you're worthwhile and you feel what you're doing is worthwhile, then you may want that to continue even if you're not here. So, and then you have to think about it. There will be other people in those spaces to still pick up the mantle, if you will, or the baton and carry it on. But it's just when you amass that type of following,
right?
I mean, do you just let it go, or do you plan for the future to protect it?
That's an important question. And I like RM's comment on this. She says, most welcome. You two are eventually saving folks' businesses and assets. And that's the point of this. Lisa and I are both entrepreneurs. We both have law firms. We both have other business endeavors. Lisa is a realtor and she's doing, her thing in that realm. I have some other business entities that I work in. So we both have this idea of, we went through all of these challenges and these battles uphill many of the time. And we spent a lot of time talking to each other about certain things in business and asking questions. Like Lisa would be like, Sandy, how do you do such and such? And I'd be like, Lisa, how do you juggle these two things? And how do you make this? And so learning how to communicate those ideas and those thoughts helped both of us in a lot of different ways, right? So that we can kind of make some adjustments, make some changes, grow in certain ways, make changes in certain ways.
Right.
So in thinking about this situation with Kevin Samuels, it's always interesting to see these scenarios, because most of the time people see the fanaticism of it. Most of the time people see, just the debates back and forth and, the feelings on one side, the feelings on the other. But at its core, there's an important lesson to be learned here. And it's, we don't know what he did in his situation. He may very well have had an outlandish plan or, all his ducks in a row. But if he didn't, can you imagine the lesson that can be learned that others can follow? And if he did, it's even better, right? It gives an example of, look at this successful person who had all of these things going for them, and look how they were able to transition that and support their family in the same token. So,
right. Well,
right.
he has children, and I mean, who knows what might happen, or if someone in the family may decide to, try to fill that space or that void.
Right.
But actually, those things can be planned out, before we leave here. If
Absolutely.
you ask yourself those questions that Sandy started out asking, what if? You can answer those questions and actually plan against them. Something in estate planning that attorneys are very familiar with is business succession planning. And you actually plan out who will succeed you, or
Right.
how someone will take over the reins. And so, as she said, it's a very important lesson to be learned, because there may be people who are wishing that they still had him in this space, and maybe he did not even think about that, or the value of his legacy. Maybe he didn't put a value on his legacy. I don't know. But like I said, these are lessons for all of us who are sitting in this space. We should definitely pay attention to it and take some heed from it in terms of our own businesses and our own planning.
Oh, absolute truth. So we're talking Kevin Samuels, the business and the brand. And we just talked about how we need to plan for the what ifs, right? We need to establish, well, what if I suddenly pass away? What if I become ill and can't operate my business? What if there is something that creates an interruption, like a COVID-19, like a flood, like a natural disaster, something else happening in the family? I remember a couple months back, my aunt passed away. Man, it threw off a couple months. And then I had COVID. It was just like it threw off months. Now imagine if I didn't have things already in place, I would have been in a real tough place. Thankfully, at the time I had a paralegal. She was able to keep up the slack a bit. I had somebody else answering my calls. So I had some help, but it was because I thought about the what ifs at that time and I already had, all right, I'm going to be out. So the number 2 thing that we're going to talk about is who will be my substitute or my replacement or my representative in terms of maintaining my business, right? Because when we talk about business succession planning, we're talking about the continuation of the business. And many of the things that we don't recognize is that just because we're not here doesn't necessarily mean our business, ceases to exist. Because I want you to think about a lot of the celebrities that have passed away, and they have these empires. The Michael Jackson estate. When you think of Aretha Franklin's estate, when you think of Prince's estate, even though they're no longer here, their music still lives on.
Yes.
Their contributions to this world still lives on. And so keeping those things at the forefront of our minds, we have to think to ourselves, it may be possible that our business will continue well beyond us. So it's like, how do we kind of set ourselves up to have a substitute or a replacement or, an agent of sorts, whether it be through creating certain documents or whether it be having a business structure where there are more people than just us.
Right.
Oh, I like this right here. She says, this is reminding me of the succession stories in the book of 1 to 2 Kings. Ooh. Now you're going to have me pull out the Bible. We might have to have a business Bible session.
I think they did business in the Bible. They did business in the Bible too.
Look, I think that there are so many lessons that can be learned, and we just have to think about, what is valuable to us, what is important for us to continue when it comes to our business. Because if we just have a business and it's just to have it and then that's it, what's the point sometimes, right? There are times when our business can surpass our being. And I can say in the case of a Kevin Samuels, when you think of the social media empire, those videos, if they were to be just stripped from the platform, let's say whatever platform they're on, if they were to just be stripped, how many people would be impacted, right? You have a lot of people that enjoyed his content, that wanted, the material that he was providing, the content that he was sharing. Imagine if that was just stripped.
Right.
But also imagine if that content continued to be nurtured and there was maybe a team involved and there was the opportunity to continue to share that message, right? So imagine those types of things. This is where it comes to this topic that Lisa mentioned. If we're doing business succession planning, we're not thinking of the business as an operation that just ceases because we no longer exist. We're thinking of it as an entity of its own for which we work on and in, and it can continue regardless of our presence. What do you think on that, Lisa?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think a lot of people forget that when you set up certain business entities, they're set up like persons. The law recognizes business entities as individuals. And so you absolutely have to think of the fact that that business might outlive you. It might out-survive you, and there still may be demand for whatever your product or your services, the entertainment you provide. That demand doesn't necessarily go away just because you die. Right. So, like I said, we have to think about it. And you don't want someone to necessarily reshape your brand, and you have no control over the legacy of what that brand is. I just went back and looked at a Kevin Samuels video just to kind of reacquaint myself with him. And, that particular was one of his last videos, over 1.1 million folks. I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at in terms of trying to grow. Do you know how much we sit on this channel and beg for subscribers.
Please watch
Do
us.
you know the value of like one subscriber? So, like I said, when you are on that level, you have to think of things in terms of, if I'm not here, then what? And
Yeah.
that's how you begin to plan against some of these things that you don't even want to think about for real.
Yeah, and look at what RM says. This is when I appreciate the conversation, right? To amass his work and eventually release a documentary or biopic, you can only imagine if his estate releases something like that. You know what I mean? So um, this could be a really huge thing that will allow his legacy to live on, especially for those that were his followers and really benefited from the information, the content that he presented. It's just so, it's tremendous the amount of impact that these types of things can have. And like it or hate it, you have to appreciate when someone creates content that resonates with that many people, right? A million
Absolutely.
plus subscribers is no easy task. And even if you were doing, sometimes people do things for shock value. I've seen some YouTubers on here that I'm just like, you can outright tell that they're doing things just for shock value. And I say to myself, that can last for a time, just like, nothing's new under the sun, right? It can last for a time, but there's going to be a time where people are going to want more than just that shock value. And
Right.
then what do you have to sit on? So when you
Right.
have somebody that amassed this much of a following, that amassed this much of an ability to produce income, right? Can you imagine, Lisa? We make us up. We got a million plus fun. Man, I wouldn't know what to
Wow.
do. I'd be online all day. Like the one thing that I did hear about him in listening to a lot of different things over the past week, because it's officially a week. He passed away officially a week ago. The one thing that I've noticed is they said he worked a lot, tremendously a lot.
Hmm.
And he would do a lot of content on a regular basis. So it was, he became one with his folks, his followers, he became one with them. And so when you're that wrapped into your work, it really becomes a part of you. It is a part of your
Yes.
legacy. So you have to appreciate, the type of work that someone has to do to get to that positioning and maintain it. Because even if you
Absolutely.
look at the level of views, and the level of content, I was trying to look at some numbers before we came on here just to kind of see, okay, what were his numbers looking like? I mean, hundreds of thousands of followers watching regularly.
Right. And just to mention that even probably a lot of people that follow him, they may not actually love what he does, but he created enough controversy in, in some of his topics that people were like, I just have to follow him because.
Yeah,
So, what I'm trying to say, it takes real talent and real skill to
right.
be able to build your numbers up like that in terms of your product and your brand. And if he was a workaholic, then he wrapped himself into his work,
Yep.
and that was value. So we have to take care of those things that we increase the value of, and we
Right.
have to protect those things and not just take it for granted like, oh, if I leave here or if I die, oh, so be it. That
Right.
may not be the way to look at it necessarily.
And RM says she just shared the stream on Twitter. Man, I need to get into some Twitter space because I see Twitter has all the stuff happening. All the things happen on Twitter. So we probably need to start getting into that mix and start sharing things there. So in talking about Kevin Samuels, the business and the brand, again, we're not talking about, all the stuff, right? He had an appeal to some, he had an aversion to others. But interestingly enough, Lisa, women were his largest composition of followers, is what my understanding is. Women.
And I wonder why, because again, not to really get off it, but he talked about women a lot. I mean, talk about offending women and the honor of women. Maybe he didn't mean to, but yeah, like I said, he
Gotcha.
was great at generating controversy. Thank you, Kevin Samuels. Rest in
Look,
peace.
people are going to be talking about him for a very long time because one thing I will say is he was himself. He was the personality that he intended to be, and he did what he did. And if you like it, follow him. If you don't like it, hello, people, it's YouTube. You can watch a ton of things, watch something else. I wasn't a follower of his, but, I could definitely appreciate some of the entertainment that was provided, because when I tell you, there was always a conversation about what was going on his channel. But, again, content wise, you always have to understand who you are. And once you do, in a sense, you're not really replaceable. But if you've established your foundation and established your purpose, someone can continue. Someone can continue the mission. But again, it takes some planning.
Well, think about some people may remember Johnny Carson. There's probably a lot of younger people here, but Johnny Carson had the television talk show on NBC for years. And then he was replaced by Jay Leno.
Yeah.
But it worked because it was set up that way. And that's what I'm saying in business. Maybe some people who have YouTube channels, Sandy, don't even think of themselves as being in business. And that might be the first fallacy. If somebody is paying you a paycheck, you're in business. So there's a lot of things that come along with being in business. And so these are just some lessons that we have to think of, even as attorneys, what we're supposed to do. Sandy and I are, I'm a solo practitioner. And Sandy's in a partnership.
Yeah.
But as a solo practitioner, I'm supposed to identify another attorney. If I get sick, I get ill, I die, someone that can step in and handle my cases. The Florida bar and most state bars definitely encourage attorneys to do that. We're supposed to. So we have to think like that across the board, no matter what business we're in.
And I like this comment here. On nearly everything, there is an off button. So you have to kind of pick and choose where your energies will be shared, because, we just can't do it all, right? We can't expect that we're going to be in all spaces and address all issues, because we have to allow people to have their own spaces. True. That's what it comes down to. So we talked about the need to plan for the what ifs, all of those what ifs. What if I get sick and I pass away, suddenly, or I become unable to operate my business for whatever the number of reasons. We talked about who is my substitute or my replacement, or the person that will basically represent my interests if I am no longer, or if I have some kind of issue that prevents me from operating my business. Mm-hmm. The third thing that we want to talk about is, will my brand be protected? When we talk about Kevin Samuels, the business and the brand, what do we think? Do we think his brand is going to be protected? And I would say it depends. It really depends on the people that are going to uphold his legacy. It depends on what he put in place for, his passing, because, we all can expect we're going to pass away. So it's not an unexpected thing, but we most of the time don't expect it to be so sudden, because, he was in the middle of life.
He was fairly young, in his early 50s, right?
Yes, early 50s. So, I beg the question, will his brand be protected? And based on what I'm seeing so far, it seems like it will be. He has enough of a following who is really being supportive of him. He has enough of a family unit that's, working in the background. He has enough of friends who are supporting the family. I've seen a lot of that, kind of watching some different content on YouTube. I've seen some backlash. But even with the backlash, I've seen people responding to the backlash. So it tells me, honestly, when you build up 1 million+ following, there's something in you that these folks resonated with. They felt it and they continued to support it. So therefore, to me, I would think that this, his passing would probably create more of a desire for people to be supportive. And to want to know if his mom is okay, and if his, I think he has a daughter, if she's okay, who would want to know, man, are his videos going to still be up? I want to see his videos. I want to support his content. What do you think about that? When I say, will my brand be protected? Like, how do we do that?
That's so interesting because I mean, I don't know who would have the authority to come in and take down his channel at this point. It could be something that may have been written into his estate that could happen, or he could have made a decision that it stays up and made that arrangement with YouTube. I'm
Right.
not sure, but it is something to think about. And remember, I'm going to answer your question in this way. Remember when the beautiful singer Aaliyah
Oh my
passed
gosh, I was just
away.
watching a video today.
Oh my God, I will always love Aaliyah. I mean, that beautiful bird song. That her voice is like an angel singing. Beautiful bird.
Yeah,
Also, but who rose kind of after her? I think that's kind of when Beyonce came on the scene. And so you will have natural born leaders that rise to the top, so to speak, sometimes and fill a void.
right,
That's what could happen in the YouTube space with Kevin Samuels, that there
right.
may be someone else that might be close enough to his brand,
I've heard
who
that.
have some of the same swag that he has a little bit, that makes people think like, you know what, this is my new Kevin Samuels on YouTube for the whole relationship piece. That
Oh
could
boy.
happen. That could happen. And there may be people purposely working on making that happen, if you know what I mean.
So we have someone else watching us that says it says RO. So I think his brand will go in many different directions, led by male and female, with changes here and there. My opinion. You know what? I think that that's very true. Because I am seeing a lot of female supporters. As much as I see all this controversy, I'm seeing a lot of female support. So that's interesting to me. And already the male support to me was very much there. Here's another comment. RM says KS was very pro get your house in order for the
Mm,
community to have insurance, wills, trusts, etc., and other
really?
legalities in place to care for your loved ones. So guess what? For that to be his positioning, to me, at the bare minimum, I'm pretty certain that he would have had certain things in place. And even when I'm listening to some of his friends or persons who are very big supporters of his, they did mention a lot about conversations that he had with them and the things that he was trying to put together and projects he was working on. So I definitely think so. I mean, I think if that's something that he really promoted, I'm really interested to see like what his estate plan looked like. That might be we might have to have a little chat about his business succession plan and see,
Yes.
what it is that he put in place. That's going to be
And
really
thank you so much. Was that
that was RM.
RM? Thank you so much for mentioning that. I don't know why that comment made me feel better. It made me feel so much better about Kevin Samuel's legacy
Yeah,
because as an estate planning attorney, that I want nothing more than for people to create legacies for the folks that survive them in
right.
whatever way that benefits his family or himself or his business the most. So I
True.
feel so much better knowing that he was all into that kind of stuff. I do.
I mean, it's really helpful, and one of the things I think about, being that both of us are not only entrepreneurs, but we also work in the space of planning. It's kind of like, when we look at things, we see it all from these little perspectives that we have. Lisa is a real estate broker associate, so she also sees real estate things when we're talking about stuff. I
Yes.
deal with a lot of the special needs population. So sometimes when I'm looking at something, I'm like, oh, could it be a guardianship situation? Oh,
Hmm.
maybe they need a special needs trust. So it's like all of these ideas pop up because, here with LearnBiz the podcast, our objective is to talk to business owners from business owners, right? We're business owners as well. We've been doing this entrepreneurship thing for, I mean, collectively more than 3 decades at least, I would say.
Oh yeah.
So it's like when we approach these topics, we really want people to understand that when you are trying to operate your business, you have to work in it and you have to work on it.
On it. We
And
say it all the time.
if you're imbalanced, if you're just working in it and you just over here like this and you're just
Right.
working, you're going to miss out on some serious things. And then if you're really focused just on working on your structure of your business, how are you going to make some money?
Right.
It-
You
you
gotta
can't.
do both. You
You
gotta
can't.
be in front of the camera, and a lot of people already know this, you have to be behind the scenes. These days you can't really be an entrepreneur unless you know how to multitask. You must know
Oh
how to
yeah.
multitask, do more than one thing really, really, really well at the same time. How about that?
All day long. So
Yes.
RM says YouTuber Dennis Sperling is a close friend of his that is currently representing his family for media interests. Perhaps a collab can happen in the future. These are huge life
Hmm.
lessons. Yeah, that would be really interesting because I would love to be able to kind of, fill in the gaps that many of us in the legal space would be like, I wonder what he had. I wonder how he set that up. Did he have a trust? Did he set up some kind of fund? Was there some program that he's going to establish, in the event something happens to him? Who's going to fill the seats, right? On that channel? Like, is the channel going to continue, or is
Mm-hmm.
it going to be one of those in memoriam, and then somebody else takes the forefront, like Lisa said, that
Right.
is relatively close, and has certain positioning here in the YouTube space. But RM, I am looking forward to seeing
RM
what
is on
happens.
it. Yeah. And you know what, Sandy? And there, think about setting up a foundation. There may be in his estate planning, he set up some type of foundation
Right.
that can help people in this space who want to, thrive as a business persons, or there may be some foundation to commemorate what he does. But these are some of the things that we can do in our own name and the names of great people, our mentors. We
Right.
can do community things, and these things will survive us and continue to bless people even when we're no longer physically here. And we need to think about that. And it's unfortunate this situation that we have to use this situation to talk about it, but it's very important that we do discuss it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, in closing, today we were talking about Kevin Samuels, the business and the brand. We covered three major things that we want you to consider. Jot this down. Make sure that you take a moment to ask yourself these tough questions, and just make sure that you have at least something in place, right? We can't accomplish
Mhm.
everything, but we really have to take a look at some things. And RM is
That's
saying
right.
that reading the YouTube terms and conditions, and managing regarding the archiving of the channel. Oh, sorry, let me catch this other comment. I was trying to move my screen here. Multitask, busy without being hurried. Different ways of being when in business. Hurried is an inner soul that needs rest.
Ooh, I
Mm.
like that.
We,
That's
we
wisdom speaking. That's R dropping some wisdom. Thank
man,
you.
it's something special. So three things that we want you as entrepreneurs to really tune into as you consider the passing of YouTuber Kevin Samuels. First, we need to plan for the what if. So ask yourself those questions. What if I suddenly pass? What if I suddenly become ill and can't operate my business? What if there's something that prevents my business from continuing an operation, even if it's just temporary? The other is, who's going to be my substitute or my replacement or my representative when it comes to this particular business, whether it be your YouTube channel or a freestanding business or a freelance business? And then, will my brand be protected? Did you
Hmm.
address trademark and copyright? Did you look at the YouTube terms and conditions? Did you consider that there may be some documents or things that you can organize to make sure that your brand is solid, and that in your passing or illness, that someone can't just swoop in and go ahead and take advantage of your hard-earned content that you've created for yourself?
Right.
So those are things that I really just hope that you will take some time and consider. We like to keep these short. I'm surprised we made it to 33 minutes. Normally we're out of here. So
Hey, Sandy, I got one other point. Speaking of people who try to get in on your stuff, somebody could actually take your name and use it within a new channel. I mean, it's
yes,
crazy if you don't do things to protect yourself, how people can just graft from you,
true.
even when you're gone. So we have to think about all those things. I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you so very much. And definitely appreciate the love. RO says, very nice, ladies. I'll be sure to pass on the good information. You rock. Truly appreciate you. And RM says, great conversation, ladies. I
Thank
look
you.
forward to more gems, This is great. Yes, absolutely. We look forward to sharing more with you. Thank you for tuning in to LearnBiz, the podcast. If you missed it, please take a moment to look at our Entrepreneur Mindset Summit. It was one of our past live streams that we did on Tuesday night. Phenomenal event. You know, we went through business formation. We talked about trademark and copyright. We talked about accounting and bookkeeping, social media, branding, and we ended it all off with health and wellness. And when I tell you, Dr. Tasha, I just did a snippet on our YouTube shorts with Dr. Tasha. And she said, I'm not going to tell you what she said. You got to look at our YouTube short. But thank you guys so much. Please look at it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll be back. Tomorrow we have Jonathan Cyprian at 12 noon. He's a former NFL player. He's an NFL veteran. He is now a real estate investor. And you really don't want to miss this because he's a young guy, young black guy. I mean, has the whole world ahead of him and is making some extremely smart business moves right now. So you have to tune into that tomorrow at noon. So thank you guys so much.
Bye-bye. See you tomorrow.